Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Be the Leader podcast. I'm so excited to have Rachel Druckenmiller back again. We had a podcast interview not long ago, and I can't remember if it was during the podcast or after the podcast. We talked about our dads, and we wanted to do a special Father's Day episode. And so here we are talking about dads, and I'm so excited to have Rachel talk about her dad because she just told me 4 years ago she wrote an article on LinkedIn called "The Entrepreneur's Daughter: The 6 Lessons." I don't remember the rest of the subtitle, but the six anyway, 6 lessons from her dad. And I thought, wow, what a great place to start. And so, welcome, Rachel. Great to have you here again. And I'm so excited for this conversation. It's just always a delight to be able to talk with you.
Yeah, me too. It's like when we had that talk, we realized we both think our dads are awesome. How do we talk about this together?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And what better way to do it than on Father's Day? So, so tell me a little bit about your dad. So, I just kind of give me a little bit of flavor, like what makes him so special?
Yeah. So he's an interesting character. He's like a littler guy. So he's maybe like 5'5", I think is the tallest he's, ever been. He's at this point, he just turned 70.
Okay.
And is in better shape than I am. I'm half his age. So that's not a joke. Like that's actually a legit thing. He's in better shape than me. And he was a teacher. So he studied, he taught history.
Okay.
And after doing that for several years, he kind of realized that that wasn't necessarily what he felt called to do. And, helping people with some like career planning and, at that time, like resumes and like what they wanted to do with their lives, like that started to become an interest to him. And just sort of like long story short, I know he discovered the work of a guy named, oh goodness, what was his name? I forget the first guy's name. I know Dick Bowles wrote a book called "What Color Is Your Parachute?" And he, got really into using that book in his work. And he started his business probably 40 years ago, doing it was called Career Transition Services. So kind of helping people that were in those transitional parts of their careers, doing coaching and whatnot. And so his office was in the converted 4th bedroom in the house I grew up in. So I grew up watching him have his own business. So all I ever knew growing up was my dad is his own boss. And, he loves his work. And so I, had this kind of skewed perspective that you're supposed to be able to like enjoy work and that it's not a drag and doesn't have to suck. So
right.
That was like one of the greatest gifts he gave me growing up, was that I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And so he continue doing that and, still working, doing like more of sort of executive coaching now and, manager trainings and that kind of thing. And one of the super cool things about him, he's an Ironman triathlete. He's done 6 Ironman triathlons.
Oh my gosh.
Starting at 56.
I said, man after my own heart.
Right. Right. So he was really bummed that this year's got postponed because he was supposed to do number 7 for his 70th.
Oh my gosh! Wow! In Hawaii, was he going to do?
In Lake Placid.
Lake Placid. Lake Placid is a hard one. I mean, that's super hilly.
It's super, super hilly and super hard. We go every year. My mom's from up there, and so we would volunteer. And so after several years of volunteering, he did some little triathlons, when he was younger. And
sure.
And so it had been years since he had done triathlons, and when he was 56, or I guess 55, he signed up for it. 56 did his first one. And then he just like got this bug, and he's got my husband's done 1, my sister's done 3.
I love it.
Become like a family affair. I'm never going to I don't have a desire to do one. I just make sure they're all well nourished.
Yes. Yes. That's awesome. Well, I love the guy already. I say that I'm a recovering triathlete because it does take a lot out of you and it takes a lot of focus. And, I haven't done a full Ironman distance triathlon. I've done a half Ironman, several. I think I've done 7 half Ironman, but it takes a lot out of you. So it's definitely almost a full-time gig.
Yes, he's very disciplined. He was a wrestler in college. He was a wrestler and he moved around a lot. His dad worked for DuPont. So he moved around like 11 times when he was a kid. So he was like kind of learning these skills of being adaptable from the time he was really, really little, but he is one of the most disciplined human beings on the planet.
That's amazing. I love hearing about people like that. What was it about him and his work and that really like impacted your career?
And I'd say a lot of it is just how his way of being. So my dad is like he loves to learn. And so, and he is a very curious and creative person. And so I saw that growing up. I saw his creativity, whether it was like making us forts or drawing cartoons or he would make up stories. There was these two guys, I think it was Jimmy John Jones and Bill Bob Bixby. He made up these stories. He would tell me and my brother about them. And we would just be at the edge of our seats. I mean, his mind is just like so creative. And so that really influenced me a lot. I mean, creativity is one of my, kind of top like character strengths and ideation, Gallup strengths. And so I really got a lot of that from him, and just this desire to know. He has such a insatiable appetite for learning and understanding the world and understanding people and getting perspective and not getting stuck in a certain way of thinking, but being open to, counterpoint. And so I saw that growing up, and that really influenced me to get curious. And I saw him, just the way that he was with people. My parents, both very humble people, very kind people. And I was really heavily influenced by that, of just learning that how important it is to be kind to people, how important it is to be honest, and how important it is to just show up with curiosity in the world. So that's really influenced a lot of how I do what I do, and telling stories, right? I'm as a speaker. You're basically a storyteller and a facilitator. And I feel like I learned a lot of that, getting a lot of that influence growing up.
Yeah. You mentioned that like you saw him enjoying his work, and how did that influence you in terms of like choosing your career path? Like, how did you know what you were going to enjoy, or you thought you were going to enjoy?
Well, I remember a couple things. So one, my parents instilled a very strong work ethic in me from a young age. So I remember the summer I turned 15, they were like, "So where are you working this summer?" And I was like,
What are you,
they were like,
you're not
sitting around here all summer, so you better go find a job. So I got a job at a produce market, and they'd have to like drive me to and from. And so I learned from a young age the importance of working really hard. I learned the importance of, I wasn't just going to be, I had hands in anything. I mean, we had allowances and whatnot, but if I wanted something, like I would save up my $90 to buy my American Girl doll when I was 10. They taught me the importance of doing that, of working hard. And a lot of it was, he is the reason I got my first full-time like corporate job, because he was friends with and doing consulting work for the company where I first worked. So it was 2003, summer of 2003. He's like, "I know this guy, Richard, and he's got this small, like, insurance, brokerage shop. And I think he'd probably find something for you to do." Like, I'm doing some work with them. I do some consulting with them. It's nice people. They're nice to work with. And so I started there as an intern in 2003. And then I didn't leave until September of 2019.
Oh my goodness. That's amazing. Wow.
So my dad is the reason I even had my first job, and he was like my Yoda. I call him my Yoda, just my little wise one, that when I would have my moments of doing something dumb or letting my attitude and ego overtake me, he was always the person I could talk to who would like get me grounded and get me back into a state of humility and honesty. And I would, I'm sure I hung up the phone on him several times because I didn't want to hear it. I was like, "No, you're supposed to make me feel, you're supposed to align with and support how I'm feeling, not be honest." And so he was just always somebody who, did that for me. And he was one that said, as I was making the decision to go out on my own, he said, "Honey," this is years ago, "honey, you'll know when it's time." And I would get frustrated. He's like, "What are you going to do? You got to make a decision. At the end of the day, the only thing you're going to regret is that you didn't do it sooner." And then one of the final questions he asked me that was really a kicker about deciding to go out on my own. He said, do you want to do what you want, like when you want, how you want to do it, and without having to like ask permission from anybody? And I said, that's exactly what I want to do. And he said, well, that person doesn't work for somebody else.
Hey, that's right. That's right. Yes, that's exactly right. So that was
So
the tipping point.
yeah, I was like, oh, fine. All right, I'll do
Okay,
it.
I'll
I'll
do
do
it.
it.
Oh my gosh. So, you talked about him being your Yoda.
Uh-huh.
Does he have any like sayings or any wise sayings that that he repeats often, or that you've heard a lot? Are there things that like just kind of come from him that you know, oh, Dad, that's that's his saying?
Gosh, there's like so many, but I mean, one of the things, like, let me think back. I know there was something that I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
Like, he'll say something like, oh, like do something every year that scares the crap out of you.
Oh yeah, that's great. That's a good one.
Like, and for him, that was like Iron Man starting to
Yeah.
do that. He's like, who starts doing this when they're 56 years old?
Sure. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Like that's
That's
when, and that's what a lot of people, especially as we, age, we get more risk averse. And
yeah.
in the as we get more risk averse, we also miss out on opportunities to grow and learn and feel alive, because when you're experiencing something new, there's a sense of aliveness that comes with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah,
I
that's
think,
one thing.
well, and that's a great lesson in and of itself, because, do something every year that scares the crap out of you is a great way to live, because that keeps you, like you said, it keeps you growing. It keeps you just expanding your comfort zone and getting bigger and bigger. And that's amazing. My dad had a saying that, and this is like totally different subject, but he always would say, David, you can always attract more flies with honey than you can with vinegar.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, I had to think about it a little bit, and I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, the sweetness kind of attracts, okay, I get it. I get it. So, I think it's great to be able to listen to the things that our dads said, and
Mm-hmm.
then how it impacted our lives and how we act and how we behave.
Yes. So last year, starting your own business,
Yeah,
it scares the crap out of you a little bit, but it,
absolutely.
keeps you honest, keeps you, again, feeling energized. And he would also say like, what's the worst that can happen? So like, if I were like, oh, I think I want to reach out to this person, like he's sort of like fearless, he's like,
Yeah.
he'll be like, I'm just ballsy, like I'll
Yeah.
just go
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
That's how he is. And so I learned that from him. And so, when I was early in my career in the wellness industry, I was a wellness coordinator at a company that, a small company that no one's heard of, like beyond Baltimore, right? Like, or
Sure.
beyond Maryland, maybe. And, I would reach out to industry leaders and be like, hey, I'd love to have a conversation with you. I think the work you're doing is really interesting. I read your book. And then, within 2 years, they're having me as a guest on their webinars.
Oh my gosh.
And so I just learned to have kind of a thick skin with reaching out to people,
Right.
and not being personally, offended if they either didn't respond to me or if they said no.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot about persistence. And if they said no, I'd be like, he taught me, it's kind of like, maybe that's just not the right person. That's not the person that makes a decision. So you go find
Yeah.
somebody else that can say yes,
Yeah.
potentially, if that person isn't the one that can do it. So just a really strong sense of persistence, and determination. And I'd say the last thing that really, this is framed in his office on the wall. It's by a guy named Dan Rauschenberg. And it's, someday I will not be able to do this. Today is not that day.
Ah,
And
that's a great one. Wow.
it's among all of his Ironman finisher certificates.
Yes, of course. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Someday I won't be able to do this. Today is not that day. That's fantastic. Wow.
Yeah.
So Rachel, you wrote an article on LinkedIn that we alluded to at the beginning of our conversation. What are a couple of the lessons that you talked about in that article that really, really resonate with you, or really have even maybe shaped the way you do business? I'd love to hear about that. And we also will link to that article too when we post this podcast.
Awesome. I'd say one thing is sort of like embrace what makes you different. Like one of the things he said growing up, because he was always little, he was like, I was always the littlest person.
Okay.
And he said, you know, I learned that if I was little, I could always make myself bigger, but somebody who was really tall couldn't make themselves smaller. And, you know, he said, I just, oh, by the way, frame was nervy. I'm thinking back what I said before. What did he say? He's like, I'm just nervy.
Nervy. Yeah.
Nervy.
Yeah.
Maybe I put my own spin on that, sidebar. But he says, I'm nervy as hell.
Yeah, that's great.
So, you know, he just kind of, he always felt a bit different. One, because he had to be constantly adapting and fitting in school as he was transitioning. I mean, if you move 11 times as a kid, like,
wow, yeah,
it's like I guess like kind of like a military family where you just don't ever feel like you have a sense of home. And so he learned that humor was one of the things that would get people to connect with him. And so he was kind of a funny kid.
Yeah.
He wasn't like a stellar student. But, you know, he just sort of learned how to use the gifts that he had, and humor as well. He's I mean, he does dad jokes like anybody else does, but he's an authentically funny guy. And I get some of my, I think, wit from my dad.
From him. Yeah.
And, you know, so I think, so that was part of it. Embrace what makes you different. So for me, like, I didn't feel like I fit in a lot growing up, you know, which was a challenge, but he was always he was my safe place.
Yeah.
So when I was sad or feeling hurt, he was the safest person for me to share that with. Or I remember growing up, I went to Catholic school, and but I wasn't Catholic. And so First Communion is like a big deal, right, in the Catholic Church. And you're like in second grade when that happens. And when you're in second grade and there's 27 kids in your class and everybody else is doing something and you're excluded from that, it's painful.
Sure.
And I remember the day of First Communion where they had all their, you know, outfits on, and they had their parties and the ceremony and all of that. And he decided to do something special for me. He took me to an Orioles game. I live in Baltimore. Orioles were not as terrible then. They're good. Abysmal now, but he took me to an Oriole game. I remember he got me like a white rose, and I just like, even I think about this, I get emotional thinking about it. And he got me, I loved Reese's peanut butter cups. And so he got me a bag of Reese's peanut butter cups. Cool. And so it's like, he knew what, I think because he knew what it felt like to like not fit in.
Yes. Yeah.
He could like really empathize with me in that regard. And so he was just like always my like safe space for that reason. And so I remember, I mean, I was like 8 when that happened. And I like remember it because of how much emotionally it just impacted me, you know? And so, yeah, he's just always been just so reliable and so dependable and so there. So I've always felt a little different in certain ways, and he's just, you know, encouraged that. And, you know, it's okay if everybody else is doing this thing and you're not, you know, it was just sort of like that. And just such a respecting guy. Like, I believe I made the choice in, you know, husband that I did. Who's, you know, married to a wonderful, wonderful man who cares deeply about me. And my dad is obsessed with him, my husband.
That's great. That's a good thing. That's a real good thing. It
was very important. I was like, if you and my dad get along, like, we're good. Like, cause my dad's my person. And, you know, that was like, you know, super important to me that they had, that connection. But, you know, so anyway, just that embracing the difference was something that I learned was, you know, okay for me. Okay for me to be different.
That's you are such a blessed person to be able to have a relationship with your dad that when you describe him as your safe place, that is really cool, because I know that there's a lot of people that may not be the case. So, I mean, that in and of itself, I think, is a huge, huge blessing.
Yeah, it really is. You know, and he, you know, he didn't have the model for that. And so it's just really interesting that sometimes we become who we are. I think it's ultimately always because of where we came from, but sometimes we in lockstep with where we came from. And sometimes we just make a total detour from where we come from. And we decide, I'm not going to be that. I'm going to be different than where I came from, and I'm going to do better by my children. And that's what that's really what he did. And I mean, the other really powerful lesson I'd say that I learned from him personally, relationally, is the importance of really hanging in there in relationships. I think our society is so expendable when it comes to relationships that the second it gets difficult, we're just like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, I only want love when it's easy.
Right.
Which is like, that's not love, but okay.
Right. It's true.
And like when I was 5-ish, he and my mom had a really rough go in their marriage, and they separated briefly, and my brother and I moved into an apartment with my mom. And I was probably devastated because he was like my person, and I was, and it was only for a couple months. I later came to find out that we had lived apart, and my parents decided to really do a lot of work to save their marriage, because they wanted, that for us. And he was like, we couldn't live with each other, but we couldn't live without each other. And so I saw them do the redemptive healing work of repairing and restoring a meaningful relationship. And so I learned, that when I went through difficult periods in my marriage and in my relationship, my husband and I have been together for like 14 years. Actually, yesterday, we started dating June 11th, 2006.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
So I learned, the importance of sticking with a relationship and doing the hard work and doing the self work. And, so I feel like that has been perhaps one of the most valuable and transferable lessons.
Yeah, I was going to ask you too about that, because that inward work, how has that impacted you as a business owner now?
Oh man, it's made me pretty darn tough and resilient, because like having those experiences as a kid, those are all examples. I didn't know it at the time. I wouldn't have called it resilience.
Yeah.
But those are all examples of resilience. And so, I mean, when you start your business the year of a global pandemic,
right, it's a little tough.
And you're a speaker, so until March 16th, 100% of your business is in-person gigs that you have to travel to.
Yeah,
you got to be resilient, or you're not going to make it.
Absolutely.
Like, so just to hear him say, my business failed several times before it was successful, and I've had downturns, and I've made it through, and I've been okay, and you're going to be all right. And, just like that encouragement and sounding board and listening ear, he's so wise, We did a video for him for his birthday through this super cool company called Tribute.
Oh, wow.
So it's tribute.co is the website. You can do milestone videos for people for like
neat.
A retirement or anniversary or birthday or graduation. And people can upload and record video messages.
Oh, cool.
So it's way cool. So we did it for him. And just to hear the things people said, we watched it on Saturday, and we had I probably got 30 people to submit videos as like a surprise for him. And just the words people said, like loyal and dependable and insightful. Loyal was the word that came up most often.
Really?
And wise and funny. And, so to have a model like that as a dad, as a woman too, that I just had a certain level of expectation for how I should be treated by everybody because of how he treated me, because of how I saw my parents treat people, an expectation for myself of how I should treat people.
Sure.
Which I think is probably one of the most important lessons that I learned from him.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, because of that relationship with him and seeing someone who is so loyal and treats others with respect. That's really cool. How have you, actually, I'm going to ask a different question, totally different question. Is there something that you know now about your dad that you didn't know as a child, but that was surprising to you, or maybe was just like, Dad, I never knew that. Was there anything like that?
Oh gosh. I just learned this the other day. He studied American history, and he was an African-American studies minor.
Really? Oh, wow. How
and
cool is that?
I said, what was your motivation for that? He grew up in the South, right? He grew up in North Carolina.
Okay.
He grew up all over, but he was born in North Carolina. And he said, I was just always interested in understanding things that most people didn't know much about.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people didn't talk about African-American history.
Yeah.
So I was curious about that.
Sure.
And so that's part of where that curiosity comes up, is he was always like, if there's something I don't understand, I want to understand it 10 layers deep.
Yeah.
And then I want to understand, is there a totally opposite perspective on this?
Mm-hmm.
And what can I go through and learn from that? Which I think is, especially right now,
yes,
such an important lesson. I think if the greatest curiosity and kindness, I think, are two of the most important values that we could be living out, everyone right now. Totally curiosity and kindness, just having that openness, curiosity, kindness, and humility. Mm-hmm. My goodness, how the world would change.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
If those were priorities, you know? So, and those are things that I've learned from him, and that I've seen him demonstrate and live out, and that I don't always do those things perfectly. I mean, humility is a struggle. We have our 7 deadly sins. Pride is for sure mine. But humility, kindness, I feel like that comes a bit more just like naturally and very easily to me, as the kindness piece. And then I'm naturally pretty curious and want to understand people and things and backstories and all of that. But I really think that right now, if, you know, it's like, we were to offer anyone anything, you know, coming away from this conversation, I really think it's like just that in particular of like, what could you do on a daily basis to show up with more kindness, with more genuine curiosity, and with more humility?
Yeah, that's yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, because I think that in our current environment, we need those things. We need that curiosity. We need the humility, and we need to be able to understand each other. And I love that. I love that. Is there anything else that you want to share about your dad that he's taught you through the years that you think would be really important, either for a leader, for a business person, just any other human being?
I mean, the thing about humility, let me go into that a little bit more for a second. So a specific story comes to mind for me. I was probably, I don't know, 2 years out of college, maybe. So working at the same company. And I was going through the beginnings of my realizing that I ultimately wanted to be doing something else. So it's hard to like know that for, you know, a dozen, 10 to 12 years and not actually act on it.
Sure.
But I started to get a bit of an attitude at work. So 2 things I want to share. So this is one of them. I started to get a little bit of an attitude with my boss, who was asking me to do things that were actually her job. And then she was sort of delegating to me her job. And I got really upset and indignant about that, because it felt unjust to me. And then I decided to, as like a 24-year-old, let her know that. I'm like, oh, well, that's not my job. Words you don't say if you want to be successful. Right. That's not my job. So even if it's not, like, don't say that. Ask, okay, what can I do to help? If I can't help, let me find someone who can. But using the words, that's not my job, is a pretty quick way to get you to not have a job.
Right.
Is something I'd say I learned from him. So he's like, she's your boss. If she wants you to go pick up coffee every day, you go pick up coffee every day. And I was like, ugh. I was like seething. I was so mad. I was like, but I just want you to agree with me. She's being unreasonable. And he just like wouldn't, you know? And so I learned, he's like, you have it pretty good there. Like, all things considered, you got a lot of things that are actually that you like, you know? And he's like, so you just basically, he didn't say this, but it's like sort of like check yourself before you wreck yourself, is more or less what he was saying to me directly.
That's great.
So that's one thing. Another skill that he taught, like another thing he taught me and skill that he taught me that is so uncommon for most humans in general, particularly for young women, is negotiation. So a phrase that he taught me that's probably going to be super helpful for anyone who works for somebody else who might be listening to this, or if you know someone who's working for somebody else. So basically this applies to everyone. Was when I started to grow and expand in my skill set and my expertise and my platform and my recognition and all of that, I would go to him and I'd be like, I want to like ask for a raise. You know, it's been whatever, 18 months or I'm doing these so much more than I was doing before. I've made these changes. I've had this impact. I put these systems and processes in place. So what he taught me was the importance. He said, if the scope of your responsibilities and the impact of what you're doing is increasing, you are not asking for a raise. You are asking for a compensation adjustment.
Ah.
So a compensation adjustment is basically, let's adjust my compensation to reflect the scope of the work that I'm actually doing now.
Yeah, that's a great
So,
reframe.
so I would go into meetings, 25, going being like, all right, let's get a, however percent, I don't remember all the percentages. I'm sure I have it somewhere saved of like the escalation. But I would have conversations. I'd do my work. I'd prepare my like materials of these are the things clients have said. Here's a list of all my accomplishments. So I think a lot of the time, again, women in particular are taught from a young age, don't toot your own horn. Like, just, if you're supposed to advance, other people will advance. Other people will like help you get there, and so you don't need to advocate for yourself, type of thing. And I was like, I have to own my career. Like, you have to own your career more than anybody else owns your career.
Yeah.
And I learned that lesson at a very young age. And so I would go into conversations with our CFO. I have all my ducks in a row, have my things lined out, and say, all right, so based on the research I've done, kind of the industry and work I'm doing, I would like to have my compensation adjusted to X. And then the phrase he taught me to say was, is that possible here? And if so, by when? And then he said, and then you shut your mouth. So the problem with negotiation is that most people keep talking.
That's right.
Said, you shut your mouth, you ask, you just say that, you don't flinch, you let it be quiet and uncomfortable, and then you let them respond. I guarantee that by the time I left where I was, I don't think it's a stretch to say that I was probably making 30% more than I would have if I had not learned how to do that and advocate for myself.
Wow. That's powerful. That's a great lesson. I love that. Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's great. Not just for women. I think it's great for men too. I think it's great for anyone who wants to be able to really create the reframe or the way to be able to negotiate. Yes. I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So that was super. He taught negotiation. I mean, he still does with this group called the Shapiro Negotiation Institute, SNI. And cool. So he, was an expert in it. So whenever I have to negotiate anything, I'd be like, all right, Dad, what do I do? And then he would teach me the things to do and not to do. And I really think that is people are not taught how to negotiate. Right.
No, it's true. Yeah.
So yeah.
It's amazing. That's amazing. So, okay, let's last little piece here of the podcast as we're getting ready to wrap up. What, if there was one thing that you would want to say to him, what would that be? What would you say to your dad?
I tell him a lot. So I will say that I do let him know when he listens to this will not be the first time he hears any of this. So that's good. I feel an integrity about that I'm consistently telling him what he means to me. But I would just say, like, I mean, I hit the lottery. Thank you. Like I hit the dad lottery. I mean, I just, your wisdom and your courage and your curiosity and your creativity and kindness and lightheartedness and determination and love, like, really inspire me to live my life the way that I do as a business owner, as a wife, as a friend, as a daughter, as a leader in my industry. I mean, it's just, I'd say he's really helped me do all of those things.
That's awesome. I love it. I love that. Wow. Thank you so much, Rachel. This has been neat to be able to share just about your dad and just kind of be able to hear some of the things that he's taught you, leadership and life lessons. I think these are all valuable for those people who are watching. I'd love to hear what people take away. So wherever you're watching this, whether you're watching it on YouTube, whether you're watching it on LinkedIn, love to just hear comment below wherever you see the video. Comment below. What are your takeaways? I'd love to hear it. I know Rachel would love to hear it, and I know her dad would love to hear it too. So
yeah, he would. We'll get him on here sometime too.
Awesome. That would be great. Have a three-way conversation. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
You might have to peel us away from talking about triathlon, but that's okay. Oh, no, that's great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Rachel. Appreciate it. Happy Father's Day to your dad. I forgot to ask, what's your dad's name?
Michael.
Michael. That was my dad's name as well. How about that?
Of course it was.
Maybe that's why we're doing this. Well, Michael, have a wonderful Father's Day. You've got an amazing daughter, and I'm so excited just to have this conversation with you again, Rachel. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for creating the space. Appreciate it.
You got it. You got it. Thanks, everybody, for watching. And until next time, be the leader and be well.